The Jets have a major injury before their season even begins. We're breaking down player props for both the Jets and the Giants and our first model bet for 2025. Welcome in another edition of the NY Sports Index. That is Jaime Eisner. I am Chris Schubert here with you to talk all things New York sports. Jaime, how are you, my friend?
Not bad. Not bad at all, but unfortunately, it looks like there's a little bit of, some issues now with the Jets offensive line that we're going to, I'm assuming that's where we're going to start, right? I know we have a lot of props and other stuff to get into, but as we're recording this Wednesday, this drops on Wednesday as well. Alijah Vera Tucker has a potentially serious arm injury. We don't know how long at this stage he's going to be out, but it does feel like it's going to miss some time and he's not going to be out there for at minimum week one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, Chris, I want to get your thoughts here on what you think the Jets are going to do at that spot. Do you think they move Tittman over and play Josh Myers at center? Like, what do you think happens with this offensive line? And obviously then there's a long-term aspect of what his potential future in New York holds and the fact that it's just yet another injury to a supremely talented but oft-injured lineman.
Yeah, I want to start with the impact that it has on this year's team, and then at the end, I'll circle back to what it means for AVT's future. This is a huge blow for what the Jets want to be on the offensive side of the ball. We know, and we were planning on breaking down, and we still will, just how run heavy this team is going to
Mhm.
be this year to just a dramatic level that I don't know if many people are ready to see how much they are going to run the football. And to lose a player like Alijah Vera Tucker, who was 17th among all guards in run blocking last year, according to PFF, was 19th in his pass blocking grade. Overall, the 15th best guard with a 77.7 overall grade from PFF. I mean, you've got two starting guards on 32 teams. There's 64 starting guards in the NFL. He ranked 15th overall, 19th at pass blocking, 17th in run blocking. That is what the New York Jets are losing for a team that wants to be excellent at running the football, and their passing game is going to be dictated off of that. He's their best offensive lineman. He's probably going to miss the entirety of the season. It's another tricep injury. It's the other tricep. It's not the one that he hurt previously that forced him to miss the remainder of the season. Surgery is absolutely on the table. And this is why they brought Josh Myers in, right? They brought him
Yep.
in to be the emergency backup option at center so that they could move Tittman over if need be. But if you look at the PFF numbers for both Tittman and Myers, it just the drop is significant. They're going to have Myers, who was 54th out of 64 centers last year with his run blocking grade, 27th among 64 centers when it came to pass blocking. And overall, he was 46th out of 64 with a 55.7. That's going to be the starting center. Now, it's better to have Josh Myers than to not have Josh Myers. It's better to have a former multi-year starter be your depth offensive line option. But the real concern I have was with Tittman moving over to guard, right? And just what that's going to look like and the impact that that's going to have on Membu at right tackle with our rookie starting over there. And the interior help is now no longer the best, one of the best right guards in the game, one of the best overall offensive linemen in the game. So just a huge blow. And it's a very quick turnaround for the Jets to try to put something together for week one. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle offensively on Sunday with all of these moving parts, and it gets better as the season goes on because Myers and Tittman are no slouches. But yeah, a huge blow, and it throws the entire offensive identity of this team up in the air. We're recording this on Wednesday, 4 days before the start of the season.
Yeah, I think obviously, you never want injuries at any time, but obviously this close to the start of the season, you've had an entire plan in place. It's almost one of those things where you would rather this happened a few weeks ago. I know that's not how that's not how life works, but yeah, they're going to be scrambling here a little bit. They have a really good test against the Pittsburgh Steelers front right away in week one, and as you said, Chris, and as we'll get into when we start talking about player props and the amount of rushing attempts they're going to get from the running back, from the quarterback, this hurts. And it probably ends any chance of him having a long-term future with the Jets at this
Oh
point.
yeah, I didn't even cycle back. I didn't even
Yeah,
cycle back to the part of the question, but yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate. I was a huge fan of his coming out. When he's been on the field, he's been a well above average starter, but he hasn't been on the field for large portions, or at least small portions a bunch of times and large portions other times. And this looks like another one that's going to be a large portion. And, injury optimism is sometimes tough when you deal with long-term injuries this early in the season. Everyone just kind of assumes, oh, they'll be back. Oh, they'll be back in a halfway through. Or they'll be back in November. They'll be back in December. Well, everything has to go right for that to happen. And then even so, it's a lot of missed time to kind of jump into the fray late in the season. So, yeah, that's about as bad of a loss for this Jets offense as they could possibly have coming into the season this quick.
And it's just terrible for AVT, right? I mean, if he had another
Yeah.
good year, I think the Jets were going to pay him. I don't think amongst Jets fans, and I'm kind of speaking for myself, but I pay attention to what other people are saying. I think if he had another great year, there would have been no qualms about doing exactly what they did with Sauce and exactly what they did with Garrett Wilson and making him towards the top end of that position group and paying him and having him be a part of their future. But how can you justify when you already are paying Sauce the money that you're paying him and you're already paying Garrett the money that you're paying him, giving market resetting or at least close to the top end of the market money for a player who's just not available for you, right? And that matters in this conversation. And so I just don't think the Jets will do that. Could I see them maybe playing the franchise tag game and playing the short term stuff with
Maybe.
EBT? They could. I just can't remember the last time a team used the franchise tag on an interior offensive lineman. I can't think of an example.
I mean, didn't the Chiefs do that recently? Am I mistaken? Did the Chiefs? I feel like the Chiefs did, but like the reality of the situation is usually you're using the franchise tag as a placeholder to allow you to
Right.
do one of two things: either that you want to come to a long-term deal and haven't agreed to numbers yet, or in the more rare case, we don't plan on signing you, but we want to trade you. And we're gonna use your fifth-year option, or not fifth-year option, excuse me, the franchise tag as a way for us to negotiate a deal with another team. Then you can negotiate your long-term deal with them. And if again, but more often than not, you're using that tag on somebody that you tend to want to have there long-term.
You're right. It was the Chiefs. They used it on Trey Smith actually this offseason. I totally memory hold that happening. And he was their starting right guard. So it has happened. It hasn't happened very often, but I do think it is a potential maybe band-aid to this to see how he recovers. But yeah, I mean, it's just a huge blow to what the Jets want to be offensively. And for a team, and I think this is a great way to transition into the player projections that we want to do here on the show today. For a team that I think we in the last episode said that they could win 8 games and be
Although I think we're in the minority on that, Chris. I've seen, so as we're recording this, everybody, it's this week. Understandable. Opening night's tomorrow. Everybody's doing their season predictions. So obviously, I'm kind of keeping an eye on what people think about the Jets and the Giants, just because we literally walk through game by game, and we seem to be in the minority on these teams getting to 8 wins. There doesn't even seem to be a lot of 7 wins out there, although I think Connor Hughes had 7 wins for the Jets. Seen a lot of 5 wins out there, a lot of 5s, a lot of 5 and 12s, a lot of 6 and 11s. So I guess we're a little bit more excited. Obviously, I'm a little bit less excited about the Jets now than I was when we did that exercise. This is a big loss, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I've noticed now everyone's doing their predictions. It's all over social media, all over all the team websites, all that other stuff, and it feels like we are the high watermark right now among at least those in the media.
And 8 wins is not like some huge number to get to, right? I mean, it's still a below 500 season,
Yeah.
but part of the calculus of getting to that number, I think in both of our minds was how many times the Jets are going to be able to play their style of football. And that certainly takes a hit. And when you're a team that's in transition, the way the Jets and the Giants are, but for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about the Jets, you kind of need all of these breaks to go your way. And immediately one of these breaks didn't go your way. And I don't want this to seem like, oh, season's over. Let's start focusing on the 2026 draft. The Jets have an extremely talented offensive line. I mean, John Simpson has been a revelation since he got to New York. They have 2 tackles that are franchise cornerstones in many people's mind, right? Joe Tippmann, they hope is their long-term center. Right now, it's going to be their starting right guard, is a very talented football player. They're not huge loss in AVT, but they haven't completely lost their identity offensively. They're just going to have to do a really good job coaching and scheming themselves into positive situations to run the football.
Agreed. I think we can put a bow on that. I think that's really what it is. It's disappointing. It's a little bit somber, but this is also not a team that we were talking about winning the Super Bowl. This is a team we have expectations to claw their way close to 500. This hurts their efforts to do that, but in the overall scheme of things, the big takeaways, which you said earlier, is that it likely lessens the chance that he is a long-term piece of the Jets' future.
So let's get into player projections, player props for all of these players. I know that you're going to share a lot of the model analysis that you did. I did my own level of data deep dive, and we'll see if we came together on this, because I kind of know how
you just asked GPT whether or not how many yards the player was going to get, and then just write it down.
I did not ask Producer AI what they thought for these player props.
Producer AI, excuse me. Yeah, we are not sponsored by any AI platform yet.
No, if
somebody wants to give us money,
sure, we would love.
I'll happily shill, but no, not yet.
Not right now. I think our analysis is going to line up, because I know a little bit about how the way you put the model together and what kind of things you look at. But I did my own deep dive on this. And should we start with the Jets, since we've been talking about them, and we can discuss the impact?
I would like to preface before, just kind of explain what I do, and then I think you can explain what you did, and then we'll just get into individuals. So what I do every season, and I do it for fantasy, I do it for betting, and I do it for just to kind of see where things are. I tend to look at every single team, and I start with the very basic core of this, which is, and I think it's a thing that gets lost, and you hear us talk about it a lot on the show, and you're going to hear us talk about it a lot today, is volume. How many plays does a team run? How many passing plays? How many running plays? And you kind of take a look at what scheme and what offenses, in these cases, these teams have used or are going to use over a multi-year sample size. And you kind of try to figure out first how often these teams are going to run and pass. And then from there, you try to see, well, how do they distribute those running and passing snaps in terms of carry percentage, target percentage, things of that nature. Then you have to make a little bit of assumptions. You have to, some teams are easier than others to say, this is the clear wide receiver one. This is their X receiver. This is how they use them. This is how they use their slot receiver. Sometimes you have to make assumptions about players you think are going to emerge into different roles into that offense, or players that came over from another team that might affect the workload. You have to factor in injuries. But essentially what I do is I start from a base of how often does a team run? How often does a team pass? Then from there, I break it down even further. How often does a team target an X receiver, a slot receiver? How often they target their tight end? Running back percentage, how do they work with it? Like teams like the Lions, for example, tend to mix in their RB2 very heavily, understandably so, when they have Montgomery and Gibbs. Other teams give a whopping percentage just to one guy. Some teams do a little bit in between. So that's kind of the basis for how I do this. It is for all 32 teams, all starters for these teams. And that's how I kind of get to a number I like. It's how I get do my fantasy rankings. It's how I do my fantasy projections. And it's also how I do my projections that start to play into the model, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the show.
What I find fun about this conversation that we're going to get to have today is I think you have two teams that go into two different buckets here. I think the Giants, there's a history that you can look at with the way Dable has done things, not just in Buffalo, but what he's done over the first couple of years in New York. Whereas the Jets, it's a little bit more assumption-based. You're trying to figure this out, and you're trying to assume a lot about what they did. And so that's where I have a lot of my numbers. And I think before we get into the individual players and talk about Fields and Brees and Garrett, I think we have to discuss what we think this team is going to be this year, what we think the fair numbers are, passing the football, running the football, the overall volume of plays they're going to want to run. And so, Jamie, what I did this morning is I looked at what the Lions offense looked like when Tanner Engstrom was there as the passing game coordinator in 22, 23, and 24, just the last 3 seasons in Detroit. And it paints an interesting picture that I don't think applies to what the Jets are trying to do. It's hard to take these numbers
because it's completely different. You're dealing with a different type of quarterback. You're dealing with a different type of team placement overall. That's where it gets interesting. And that's where you have a hard time kind of assessing we have our thoughts and we feel good about what we're both going to say, but this is not one of those ones where I'm going to put my stake in the ground and say, I would bet my house on this, because there are so many unknowns right now.
Plays per game for the Lions over the last 3 seasons. In 2022, they were 13th. In 2023, they were 3rd. And in 2024, they were 2nd. And they maxed out in 23, running 66.8 plays per game. And I think top line, my takeaway is the Jets want to be nowhere near that number.
I think they'll be under 60.
I agree. I agree that
both by design and also because they're not as good offensively.
Correct. I think there are going to be a bunch of drives that go 3 and outs, and I think in general they're going to have very limited offensive possessions because they're going to want more long 10, 12, 14 play drives that take off 7, 8 minutes. And if you have 3 or 4 of those a game or 2 or 3 of those a game, that's going to be a large chunk of what you do offensively. Rushing attempts per game. In 2022, the Lions ranked 13th with 28.2. In 23, they were 8th with 29. And in 2024, last year, they were 4th with 30.9. Now, that number last year feels very in line with what the Jets want to be. They want to be towards the top echelon of running the football. My concern, though, is how often are they going to be in those types of situations where they can heavily run the football?
Yeah. Right now, I have them set to run the football 31.3 times per game, which is the third highest in the NFL behind the two teams that you're probably thinking of, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles and that's the Baltimore Ravens. And obviously, QB rushing attempts are a huge piece of that equation, especially compared to QB rushing attempts in Detroit, for example. But yeah, I think some of that is going to be inflated because Justin Fields is going to have a lot more running opportunities, both designed and when plays break down. But it's also not going to quite be in that 32, 33, the very tippy top range because they're not as good as those other two teams that are going to have the opportunity to really salt games away late. The Jets aren't going to be given the luxury to salt a ton of games away late like some of those other teams are able to. But I do think they're still going to run a ton both traditionally and with their quarterback.
Last year, the Jets ran the 5th most passing attempts, 35.7. They were 32nd in rushing attempts with 21.4. I almost want to just flip those numbers say that's what the Jets want to be this year.
Yeah, I have them second lowest passing attempts, only behind Baltimore. And I think it's right now Baltimore, Philadelphia, and the Jets, and the Chargers, by the way, all kind of in that group. And obviously, it's not a Chargers show, but I think people are might be surprised to hear that. And it's kind of what I predicted last year. The efficiency in Los Angeles has gone way up under Harbaugh and Roman, but the play count has gone down. But yeah, the Jets are going to be they're going to run under 60 plays, I think. And I think, like we said, both by design and both because they're just kind of not good enough to get to that other level. But if they want to win the game, they're not throwing the ball 35 times. I think if we look back at the season and we look at the Jets' record when they threw 35 or more times per game, it's probably going to be 1 and something.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the Lions over the last 3 years, the lowest number of pass attempts that they had per game was last season, where they ranked 13th with 33. I think that number's too many for what the Jets want to do offensively, and what I think is fair to ask of Justin Fields. And you've said their name twice, but I think the team to invoke here, and I get it, they're not this team and they don't have a difference maker at the position the way this player is, but they want to be Baltimore. Baltimore was 2nd in rushing attempts last year and 31st in passing attempts. Like the Jets want to run the ball probably 33 to 34 times, and they want to throw the ball at most 28 times, which is what Baltimore did last year. The reason why Baltimore can do that, though, is because they have leads in games late because of how good they are offensively, how dynamic they are offensively. I don't think the Jets are going to have that much overall team success to be in those types of positive game situations where they're holding on a 10, 13, 14-point lead late and they can just run the ball every play.
Yeah, they're running 90% of the time. Yeah.
I just don't think they're going to do that. That's kind of how Baltimore gets to these big numbers, in addition to they have a running quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So it's just Baltimore's kind of the model. And an inverse of what they did last year is kind of what I'm looking for. But you also have a coordinator who was just a passing game guy last year. So what type of extra wrinkles does he want? What is the overarching thing that Glenn tries to instill? And talked about it in the open. Do they have to kind of adapt here now with AVT out and maybe adjust their game plan a little bit here in the first couple of weeks when they try to get a solidified offensive line group? But yeah, it's going to be a run-heavy team. I mean, I think they're going to shock you with how much they run the football. And passing-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the worst team in the league in terms of pass attempts.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be up there. And so which one do you want to get into first with Justin Fields? Do you want to talk about the rushing or do you want to talk about the passing first?
I want to talk about passing because I want to present it to you this way. 2,600 yards. If Fields plays all 17 games, let's just assume for a second that he does, is 153 yards per game. That doesn't feel like a terrible number for him to hit, even with them throwing it at most 27, 28 times. Like, that feels incredibly reasonable to me.
That's the over-under, right? What is
20,
it? What is the
26
exact number?
the number that you put in the document that I'm consulting,
2,600 and a half?
2,600 and a half. So I just took it at 2,600 and said, what does that look like over the course of 17 games? Now
Yeah.
he's going to miss a game or two because it's Justin Fields is what happens.
Yeah.
But 153 passing yards per game doesn't feel like that's going to be the top end of what Fields is able to do.
No, you're playing the injury game here with
Yes.
Justin Fields. So I don't think, I mean, I guess on some level, there is always an inherent job risk with Justin. When you're just a certain level of a quarterback, there's always an inherent risk that a team could just say F it and just change their mind at some point if things aren't going well. But I think this bet's more of how healthy do you think he's going to stay? Because I have him playing 15 games this year and having a little over 2,900 yards. What do I have him at right now? 2,942 is what I have for him in passing yards with 15 games played. So what is that? I'm going to do quick math.
I got it. Don't worry. I'm ahead of you.
Okay.
That's 109.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that's about what, well, clearly it's what I expect, but I think that's kind of where I don't feel like I want to go above 200 per game. I feel like 150 or that range you had, or 153 is probably a little low. But again, you're playing the injury risk game. I don't think his job is really that tenuous unless he is just awful, because I don't think they didn't really make much of an effort to bring anybody in to really push for that job. And I also don't see them being in a position where they would look to trade for somebody midseason, like a Kirk Cousins, for example. I just don't think they're in that space right now in their arc as a team. So I think the job is pretty much his when he's healthy. And if he's healthy for even, at those numbers, even 13, 14 games, I think he can go over that total.
I mean, Jamie, would it surprise you for us talking on Sunday of Justin Fields going 16 for 24 and throwing for 195, 205 yards? Like, doesn't that feel reasonable?
Yeah.
That's a 67% completion percentage, and that's 195 yards, and that puts him right in line with hitting this number. And I don't feel like I stretched my expectations of Justin Fields to get to those numbers, and it feels very much in line with how the Jets want to run their offense.
Yeah, and that's why this seems to me of a bet on health versus a bet on ability, because the number isn't. Now, if the number was set like at 28 or 29, then at that point you're having a conversation about, okay, now they think he's going to keep his job, he's going to stay relatively healthy. What do we think he does? At 2,600, that kind of feels like a number that is around 12 games. And like at that point, you're starting to think of, is there an IR stint or not? That's kind of what you're betting on here.
Yeah, and at 2,900, I think you're like, oh, I need that 300-yard game from him to get to that number by the end of the season. Right? I'm going to need that marquee performance. Whereas at this number, it feels like if he just stays the course and does what they want him to do, he'll
stays on the field.
If he stays, if Fields stays on the field,
yeah, pun intended. I think.
I don't think you intended that at all. I think that was.
But yeah, no, he's just got to stay on the field here.
Rushing yards, 650 and a half. That breaks down to 38 yards per game.
Yeah.
Over.
Way over on this one.
I mean,
again, this is a bet on health, but I have him up 825 rushing yards, Chris. So what does that give me in 15 games?
55. So you're right there.
I've watched a lot of Justin Fields. I watched a lot of Justin Fields in person. I can almost see Soldier Field from my house, just the way I look out the other way. But and I watched him in Pittsburgh. He can take over the game with his legs. He is going to have a couple 100+ yard rushing performances this season. I really think that. So this is a case of just stay on the field, because I do think you're rarely going to come out of a game with him not getting 40, 50, 60 rushing yards. And I think this is really interesting. I bet you when you go in to look, and for those of you that like to wager, which I hope you do because you're listening to the show right now, bet you're going to take a look and see what his over-unders are every single week. And they're going to be a lot higher than the number that Chris just said is projected over the course of the season. So I bet you're going to have a hard time finding a good number on Justin Fields under 40 rushing yards a game.
And the other thing, too, doesn't it feel like if the Jets are going to hit the 8 wins like you and I predicted, he's running the ball 75 yards, 80 yards, 90 yards a game? Like, they're going to run the ball a lot. There's going to be so many designed runs that they're going to have set up for him as well. Like, how much of that rushing volume, 33 attempts, is just going to be designed QB runs from him? It's going to be a decent chunk.
Yeah.
It's going to be the scramble plays. It's going to be, this is a designed QB keeper.
Yeah, and including games he hasn't even started, he has more than 50 rushing yards per game on average. When he was the primary starter in those last 2 years in Chicago, he was averaging 64.3 yards per game. His career high is 76.2 yards per game back in his sophomore season.
And I'll continue
So,
to say it, that I think this is an offense that is going to design things better for him
yes,
than in Chicago and in Pittsburgh. And so there's an upside play there as well of they're going to actually design plays and call plays in moments that are going to be even more beneficial for his run game.
correct. So, again, this is a bet on health, and I feel really good about this. I mean, I think he can. What was the betting number?
650.5 is what you wrote
Yeah.
down. Over.
Yeah, over. Again, that this is another bet on missing 4 to 5 games, right? Like that's what those two numbers say to me.
And if
Both
he
the
doesn't,
passing numbers and the rushing numbers.
and if he doesn't, let's say he just has a great year luck-wise when it comes to health, although the
Yeah.
Jets' luck so far is already 0 for 1. That's 38 yards per game. Like, what are we talking about
Yeah,
here?
he's flying
Over that number at that pace, right?
Yeah.
The passing touchdowns is an interesting one. It's 14.5. And I'm sure you're going to have a history lesson for everybody of how he's done compared to that number throughout his
Yeah.
entire career. I'm a little just worried about volume here.
Yeah, and this is where it's interesting because touchdowns are more fluky than people think in
Mhm.
terms of touchdown percentage. Typically you're going to see most quarterbacks are hanging somewhere in the 4s, but guys will spike. You'll have a guy have a spike of 6, 7, sometimes if it's like a Lamar Jackson case, sometimes even like a 9% touchdown rate. And certain quarterbacks are better than others. Justin Fields has been about 4% for his career. And really as a starter, he's been mid-4s is kind of where he's been. And that's kind of where I have him here. I have him projected for 19 passing touchdowns. Again, that would be a career high, understandably, but I do think he's going to get opportunities to throw the ball. I like the addition of Mason Taylor down there. Garrett Wilson's obviously a star. This is again, to me, a bet on health as well because there's really only so few passing touchdowns you can have as a starter. There is a point where you have to get to you just logically speaking, it's really hard to be under 1 passing touchdown per start. Over the course of a full season. It is tremendously difficult to do. And even Justin Fields hasn't really done that in his career. Those 2 years where he was a starter, he had 33 touchdowns in his 28 starts. So again, not much over that, but it's really tough to be under that number as an everyday starter. You're going to get opportunities. They're not just going to be able to run the ball constantly. You're going to get some yak opportunities as well, where guys take the break long ones. So again, this is a bet on health. I'm a little over, was that like 1.1 touchdowns per game, 1.2 touchdowns per game? That's kind of, I got to do the math on that. But I do think, again, let's go over this number. Yeah, 1.26 touchdowns per game. That is what I have as his projected number. Again, that's not exciting, but it's pretty tough to be a full-time starter and not do that. Like, you don't see that in the NFL. Even as for little as we think the Jets may throw, as little as Justin Fields has been asked to throw, just the rates of an NFL starting quarterback of any caliber tell you he can probably get over that number if he's healthy enough.
And if you believe, like many of the people who are predicting this stuff, that the Jets are going to win 5 or 6 games, they're going to be out of it late and throw a bunch, right? And so
Yeah.
there's an opportunity to get some garbage time stuff as well to hit that number of one. I mean, 1 touchdown a game, he clears this, right? And so you
Yeah.
have to feel decent about where that number kind of sits.
Let
Although
me,
it's tough. You just never know how the game script is going to play out. Although we're going to talk about Garrett Wilson's receiving touchdowns here in a minute. I'm much more in favor of taking this touchdown prop than Garrett's touchdown prop.
So I'm just taking a look right now, just from last year, because I am curious, because I don't want to just say things just to say things.
Really?
Last year, there were only 2 quarterbacks that started double-digit games as a starter,
Okay.
and threw for fewer than 1 touchdown per game.
Hold on. Just give me that again. I want to try to guess them.
Okay. There were only 2 players.
Okay.
And by the way, it's going to be hilarious when I tell you the 2. There were only 2 players that started double-digit games, so started 10 or more games last year, but threw for fewer than 1 passing touchdown per game. Because I want to give you an idea of how rare this would be for him to be under a touchdown per game. 2 guys last year.
I'd like one hint. Can I get the conference breakdown of the 2 players?
Well, one's in the AFC, one's in the NFC, but they're both in the AFC this year.
They're both
on the same team this year.
It's Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones.
It is. So that's where it becomes really, really interesting.
And he's
I want to see what happens.
Players, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to 2023. Let me see if I can find anybody. Let me go back 2 seasons because I really want to kind of display. There were 3 that season. It was Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, and by 1 touchdown, Mac Jones. So I know Justin Fields isn't elite as a passer. I'm not trying to claim that he is. But it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to, if he plays, what's the betting number?
14.5.
Okay. So if he plays 15 games, if he misses 2 starts, even if he misses 3 starts, it's really tough to get to go below that number. Like he's going to have to miss a lot of time.
And again, down in the red zone, when everybody's focusing on Brees, like he's going to throw the ball to Mason Taylor a lot. Like he's going to throw.
Yeah, and there'll be RPO options for him where he's going to have a throwing option, whether it's a slant, a smoke, or, something like that. That he's going to occasionally to be a tendency breaker. You're going to have some tendency breakers if you're going to run this much. You're going to have some trickery. You're going to have some eye candy. You're going to have to show some different looks, and you're going to have to be at least a viable threat as a passer, or else none of it's going to work.
And again, like, can I push back on just? And I know you're not doing this, but there just seems to be this narrative at large. Like Justin Fields can throw the ball down the field. It's not like he's Sometimes I think we talk.
He's just not asked to.
I think sometimes we talk about Justin Fields like he literally can't throw the ball down the field.
Like he's like a punter in Madden, like all 3 quarterbacks got out and you have to play your 12 overall punter. It's not quite what's happening here.
He's not that bad. And I do wonder if there will be an interest from the coaching staff to add more to his plate if he shows how comfortable he is in the offense, and that's their way of maybe getting to a balance. Remember, they gave him a 2-year deal. There is a world where they want him to be a bridge for not just this season, but for 2 seasons. And if he plays well, they may add more to the menu. They may add more play.
And to your point from the other episodes, again, it's a low bar to clear, but this is the best offensive coaching that he's had in the NFL. So maybe there is another level. And again, we're not talking about top 10 quarterback in the NFL level, but I mean, I think at the level he's currently at, he can hit those stats. But if there's another level, maybe it looks a little even better. Maybe you're not even sweating those bets out in December.
Let me find a level. I want to find a level right now. Passing yards from last season.
Want me to sing like elevator music in the meantime?
I mean, you're telling me he can't be trying to look at a quarterback who makes sense. You're telling me he couldn't do what Kirk Cousins did last year in Atlanta? I mean, he threw for 3,500 yards, but you're telling me that if there's an extra level to this offense and an extra level to Justin Fields, that he can't get to that? He's not going to be a 1,000-yard passer in his career. But
yeah, I mean, here's what I have for him. I have him at 2,900 passing yards, 19 passing touchdowns, but 10.5 picks, because these are decimal numbers for me, 825 rushing yards with 6.75 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's what I have for the year, and I think that's very doable for him. And at that, I do think the Jets are in that 7 to 8 win range if he's able to do that.
Gardner Minshew threw for 3,300 yards 2 years ago for the Colts. Like, you're telling me like Fields can't get to those numbers if everything works according to plan? I think he can get there, and he's more comfortable in the offense. So yeah. A lot of time spent on Justin Fields and the Jets offense. Let's try to rapid fire through the rest of these. Brees, 825.5 rushing yards. I think all you need to do is listen to everything we've said about the Jets rushing attack to know he probably loved this number.
Yeah, I have it at 969.75. I do think he's going to split time with Braylon Allen. Do I think he's going to be... Apparently the entire internet thinks he's a bum. Like the entire internet, social fantasy football players, I mean, they talk about him like he's already dead. This offense isn't going to work with just one running back. And even if Braylon Allen takes over as the de facto RB1 at some point this season, which is possible, it's not guaranteed like everybody thinks it is, but it's possible. Brees Hall's still going to be heavily involved. This is going to be such a run-heavy offense. He's not as he's a guy that I don't think is ever going to live up to the hype that he kind of had coming in and he had as a rookie. But I do think this is a guy that can flirt with 1,000 yards because he's going to get the rushing opportunities to do so.
Rushing touchdowns, 5.5. Touchdowns for running backs are always
Tough,
tricky, man. It's always hard.
I have him at 5 on the dot. So this is a stay away from me.
And this is just a roll of the dice of who's the featured back in the red zone, man. Like who's getting those first and goal, the one.
And how much does Justin Fields get? You know what I mean? Like they're not going to use Justin Fields like Josh Allen gets used or like Jalen Hurts gets used, where those guys are threatening for a double-digit rushing touchdown. Oh, not threatening, get you double-digit rushing touchdowns each year. But I do think Fields is going to be involved. So, and there's a lot of mouths to feed. And quite frankly, the Jets are going to run the ball a lot, but they're not going to be high scoring. Like, I don't think this is a team that's going to be putting up a lot of touchdowns in general, but they're going to try to beat you by shortening the game and playing good defense.
I can't wait for the first quarter of the game on Sunday for the Jets to come out and throw it on their first 3 plays. Like, just to absolutely.
Three and out would be hilarious.
3 and out, they throw it on the first 3 plays.
Incomplete.
Everyone's in their mind to start losing. Well, that's
although to be fair, then Pittsburgh might do that same thing.
Yeah,
so
that's when Red Zone will show the commercials when the Jets are just throwing incomplete.
I don't want to talk about it. They already snuck him in last year, so I knew they don't ever take these things away. So I knew it, but whatever.
Garrett Wilson receiving yards, 950.5. I am staying away from this number.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to stay away from every Garrett Wilson. I have him at 955.5.
So it's just like we're not.
This is not indicative of the talent level.
No.
He is a 1,200, in my mind, level, 1,200 receiving yard level receiver. This is more indicative of not having a top 15 quarterback and having a passing offense that's going to be near the bottom in total plays. I do have him pushing. I have him right now getting 136 targets, so he's still going to get targeted like a top receiver. But the completion percentage and just the volume of the offense isn't just going to bring him into that kind of level. So I'll stay away from this because I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it's just an overall structure of this offense / a QB issue. But I think that number's clearly spot on.
Receiving touchdowns, 4.5.
5.05. Again, kind of the same deal. I just don't.
Talking point. There's
just not going to be that many passing touchdowns to go around. We just talked about it. Like, we're talking about what are the numbers we just talked about? Like 1.25, 1.26 per game. I mean, and by the way, touchdowns aren't necessarily a talent. Yes, you can have talent that make it easier to score touchdowns. Yes, you need talent on certain touchdown type plays, but this is a good case of sometimes raw numbers don't equate to talent. And there's a lot of factors that go into that.
One player on the defensive side that we want to talk about, Will McDonald, his sacks this upcoming year, 8.5. I love the over. I think this dude is special. So I'm taking the over just on vibes. I'm sure you'll have some fancy stats to back this one up, but
yeah, I mean he broke out last year. Clearly, he got the 10.5 sacks for him after his 3-sack rookie year, and it was good to see. I don't really have a lot of fancy analytics for you. I don't see why he can't flirt with 10 sacks again this year. He's going to continue to get plenty of opportunities. He's been healthy. He played every single game last year. He's going to continue to have a strong role, and this is going to be a defense-first team, and teams are going to try to throw on the Jets so they can kind of put themselves in a position to get up and force the Jets outside of the game plan they want to play on offense. I really don't see a reason why he can't go over this number. Again, a lot of these, especially for defensively, you're just betting on are they going to play the full season or not. You know, if he plays 17 games again, I think he's going to be a double-digit sack guy once again.
Improved interior that should help with the run defense, providing more opportunities overall. Attention that will get paid to both Quinnen and Jermaine Johnson should also help Will McDonald. Like you do as an offense and scheming your offensive line, you're kind of picking your poison a little bit because if you focus on Q, you're going to leave WMD. If you focus on Will, you're leaving Q and Jermaine. And like Jermaine is kind of the forgotten guy in all of this who can also be a game wrecker on that side of the field. So the improved the improved interior of the defensive line, the sheer talent that they have across the board, I think big year incoming for Will. And again, 8.5, he had 10.5 last year. You're expecting him to take a step backwards? Like I just don't see it, especially in Aaron Glenn's defense. Like I just don't.
Yeah, I think that my expectation is that probably the thought is that the return of a hopefully full season of Jermaine Johnson might take away some of those opportunities from him, but I don't think it will.
The Giants side of things. feels like more known commodity on what Brian Dable wants to do with this offense. Unfortunately, well, I don't know who's playing quarterback and for how long they're going to be playing quarterback. And maybe this is where
Need
we
to do the betting odds.
and maybe this is where we can sneak in that Jackson Dart was
Yeah.
listed as the backup quarterback for the Giants, not
Yes.
Jameis Winston. So you're just one bad play away from Jackson Dart being under center, and the betting markets really don't know what to do with this. I mean, how do you put Russell Wilson odds together when by week 4 he could be benched and Jackson Dart could be taking over as the starter?
Yeah, that's why they didn't. So there are no QB props for the New York Giants to bet on right now, obviously outside of just betting on week 1. But yeah, and we spent an extensive amount of time talking about Jackson Dart when his potential opportunity to start is. We found a new fun one when we went through Playoff Predictor to go through games. We found a new spot where we both kind of liked the chances of him starting. But I mean, at this point, with the hype that surrounds him, would you be shocked if he's starting in October?
No,
Like, I wouldn't be.
especially because they
And
named him the backup when they did. Like,
yeah, the hype train's out of control, both in positively and negatively. And, negatively, like you always worry about too much hype on certain guys, but positively because there really is no reason to not be hyped about Jackson Dart right now.
well, it's not so much the hype train that I think is going to drive this, although that is a factor that the noise can sometimes just become overwhelming and you have no choice. But to me, them making Jackson Dart the backup quarterback for week 1 is their inference or they're leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that he's a little bit more ready than maybe a lot of us thought he was. Because
Yeah,
this tells me they're comfortable, and I don't wish this on anybody, but they're comfortable if Russ has to go in the blue tent because of a concussion, that Jackson Dart can run this offense. Because if they weren't comfortable with that,
yeah,
they
100%.
have Jameis Winston on the roster. So this feels like, hey, we don't think he's ready, and we don't want to do this to the kid, but we think he's going to be ready pretty soon. And so we're comfortable with him being the backup. And so we said week 9 when we were doing the playoff. I mean, this screams that Saints game. Like, it just screams he's going to be in there by then.
Yeah, it does really feel like this is going to be much sooner rather than later with him, one way or the other.
Tyrone Tracy, rushing props. We do have numbers for him. And interestingly enough, the Giants were 25th in the league last year in rushing attempts per game at 24.9. I think that has a lot to do with game state and where games were for them and that they needed to throw the football quite a bit.
Yeah.
His props 725 and a half rushing yards and 4.5
Yep.
rushing touchdowns. What does the Jaime Eisner AI predictive analytic model say?
It says over. I think the Giants are going to be closer. As you mentioned, the number of times they ran last year, I think they're going to be a little bit closer to 26 rushing attempts per game. I think Tracy should get close to 200 carries. I have him at 867.58 rushing yards. I expect him to be not only the lead back, but to be used pretty heavily. Obviously, you and I are both ASU grads. We are big fans of Cam Scatterboo, who is the backup there, with Devin Singletary being the third man on the totem pole. But Tracy was excellent last year, and he's given every reason to continue to be the guy. Scatterboo is back now, finally, but was dealing with a soft tissue injury for a brief period of time. He will be involved, and he will be active, but I think Tracy is the clear RB1 on this team and will be that for most of the season, if not the entire season. So I like the over here on that, and I have him at 5.17 rushing touchdowns.
Malik Neighbors, 1,150 and a half receiving yards, 7.5 touchdowns. And I think my top line takeaway is Jackson Dart starting sooner than all of us expect is good things for this number, because I can forecast and see into the future this world that when Jackson Dart is a play is broken down and he doesn't know what to do, his default is going to be get the ball to Malik Neighbors. Like, that's going to be the default setting for him and just for the offense at large, right? But especially for a rookie QB. So I love this number, knowing the news about Jackson Dart being the backup for week 1.
Yeah, I have Neighbors leading the league in targets. I think he's going to have that sort of a volume. I have him 1,284.6 yards, 7.2 touchdowns. Looks like he's healthy now, is back practicing. Seems like he's good to go, which is good to see because he had some various ailments that he's been dealing with for much of training camp / the preseason. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a clear 10 target a game player, and there are only a small group of those guys in the NFL right now. I think he is one of them, and I think he's going to continue to be one of them. And there's going to be plenty of passing opportunities for the Giants, particularly early in the season, as we talked about their schedule. This is where it plays really well for some of the receiving counting stats for some of the top Giants. Malik Neighbors in particular. Like, again, I think, boy, I mean, I got him at 109 catches. If I'm going to round up, 109 catches, 1,285 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think another really, really strong season for the second year.
Pair of pass rushers for us to close out this for the Giants. Abdul Carter, the rookie, 7.25 sacks is his number. Brian Burns, 8.75 sacks. You just have to ask yourself, how many opportunities are these guys going to get throughout the game? Last year, the Giants were 9th with 2.6 sacks per game. Some rough math there. That's around 35-ish, maybe a little north of that if we round, of sacks that they had last season. Kayvon Thibodeau's also there. There is just a concern of how productive Abdul Carter can be early on. There's going to be attention paid to Brian Burns, so that could open things up for Carter. So where do you stand on this one? I think they both go over just because I think there's going to be opportunities, but it is an interesting dynamic with the two guys and Kayvon Thibodeau also there.
Yeah, I mean, I like the over for Abdul Carter because I do think he can easily get to 8 or 9 if he stays healthy. I think he is coming into the league as a player that's already a high-end pass rusher. This is not somebody that you're looking at as a pure projection. This is somebody I think is going to come in, hit the ground running, and be highly successful. And, you know, we have seen guys come in and be sack monsters right away. And now with teams that are throwing more than they've really ever had before, a little bit less last year as they started to see a little bit more of a running game. But compared to times previous, I do think he can get himself into that spot. And I think he actually can get himself in that double-digit class. The last rookie that got double-digit sacks, I believe, was Micah Parsons back in 2021 when he had 13 sacks. Obviously, there's a million reasons to make some comparisons, some contrasts there. But I think he's going to get that. You had Burns at what number again?
This is not my number. This is the number you wrote down on the document.
Yes.
8.75.
So he hasn't. So he's gone 3 for 3. 3 and 3, I should say, in his career on that number. 3 under, 3 over.
When were the 3 overs?
They've been all over the place. Actually, all 3 of them were in Carolina.
So he has not done that in a New York Giants.
No. So, if we want to go by year, he's gone in the 6 years in the league. 7.5.
Pizza Hut are just $5 each.
Apologies. There's a tab on the screen.
He's sponsored by Pizza Hut now?
I don't know.
Good Lord. 7.5 as a rookie, then went 9, 12.5, 8, and then last year 8.5 with the Giants. So I think this is a stay away. It's the right number. Obviously, there's going to be more pass rushing ability that happens on this team. Well, we kind of see where defenses go. Is there a point where defenses start shading towards Abdul Carter? Actually, that's a good number for Brian Burns. He's basically, I mean, look, 4 of his 6 years in the league, he has been within 3/4 of a sack of that number. Like, that just seems to be a good number for him. Not one I'm really racing out to bet one way or the other.
So there you have it. The player projections or the player props for both the Jets and the Giants. And before we get out of here, before we get to the final word, there's a model bet that Jamie wants to share with everybody.
There is. So basically what I do with these, and we explained a little bit earlier what my position is in terms of how I come up with these numbers. But, and obviously during the season, I start replacing projected numbers with real numbers and use the same method. But I take a look at all the bets, and essentially what we do is we put them all in an equation. We rate it based on how teams perform against certain players at certain positions and certain stats at home and on the road, and kind of spits out a projected number for a player. And Chris and I did some A/B testing last year on this, is kind of finding out, like, we don't just bet every number it says to go over on. No. Like, that's not what we're trying to do.
Well, we did it first.
So,
we did it first.
We did it first with mixed
results,
success. And so what we really found out is that there is a kind of a threshold that has worked out for us more often than not. I'm gonna have to pull up the numbers for that, but there is it's a 40% threshold, where if our projections go 40% higher than what the line is, then that's something we feel comfortable betting And last year, I got to find it now.
I'm looking for it too, so you can keep
I
talking.
put it in a random Google Doc, and that's where I have
You're-
to go back and try to find this. And I've obviously had a lot of Google Docs since then. But last year in these scenarios, let's see.
I mean, I'm just scrolling through our Discord history of all the media that we've shared with each other, and what I'm realizing in this conversation is we share a lot of multimedia.
We do. And like this should, I'm trying to think, maybe I didn't even save it. I had to save it somewhere because like we had the exact percentages.
Yeah, no,
that
I
we
know
would have
exactly
used.
the chart that you're looking to find, and I think at some point I'm going to be able to find it in here.
All right, well, while you're looking for,
Yeah.
oh no, I found it. Model tracking. Got it. Okay. So on the thresholds of bets that have the 40% or higher number relative to the number that the books are offering, went 69 and 41 last year. That's a 63% win rate. So, and these are not alternate lines. So we're not like doing minus, oh, this was a minus 350. No. These are all just regular standard what the lines are. Now we will shop, some books will have better numbers than other books, blah, blah, blah. But these are all standard offerings. So 63% win rate on these bets last year. And this year we have one so far starting, and that is Saquon Barkley over on receiving yards. His line is 11.5 right now. Our model projects that he will get 17.12. Which is a 48.87% increase.
So that triggered.
So it hits our mark.
Yep.
Now this is one of those ones where typically Saquon Barkley is around in that 2 catch range. He has gone over this total more than half the time recently. I think the number was low because he hasn't done it recently against the Cowboys. But to me, I think with even though they have their full complement of weapons, Saquon Barkley is still he's not targeted like he was in New York. Like nobody's targeted Saquon Barkley like Eli Manning used to, not even Daniel Jones. I mean, he used to get like monster target shares with Eli Manning back in the day. But he's still going to get an opportunity to catch 2 or 3 balls in this game. And if he does, he should easily go over that number of 11.5. So that will be the Thursday Night Football. That is our only model bet. There were some things we liked but didn't quite get there. Dallas Goedert was one of them that didn't quite get to the threshold number in terms of his receiving yards. But to me, Saquon Barkley either over 1.5 catches or, in this case, our model bet, which I think you'll get better numbers on, is over 11.5. And shop it around because I have seen, as we're right now, some places have it 11.5, some places at 12.5, some up to even 13.5. So this is where, if you have the access to multiple books, shop it around. Every week, just get the best number. You never know. You never know when you're going to need that 1 yard. You never know. So shop around if you can.
And it changes whether or not it hits the 40% threshold sometimes, right?
Correct.
It goes from 11 to 12 or 12 to 13. That changes.
Especially on those lower numbers. Yeah.
Right.
Or receptions. So
right.
Sometimes you'll see like a whole reception less on a site. Like you just got to kind of shop around.
Right. Exactly. Jamie, do you have a final word today? I have one prepared as well. So I'll let you go first.
Okay. I'm going to deviate a little bit because it's not about a New York player or a New York team, but it involved one. So I saw it and I have thoughts, as is most of the baseball world. I want to give a shout out. I want to start positively though. I want to give a shout out to the professionalism and the sportsmanship of Astros catcher Cesar Salazar.
For not punching his teammate in the face on television?
Correct. Because what Framber Valdez did against the Yankees in this game, where he and I will say this, I personally believe,
Jamie,
that he intentionally crossed up his catcher because he was unhappy about pitch selection on what ended up being a grand slam given up to Trent Grisham. He crossed up his catcher. If you haven't seen the video, you'll see it. Just search Framber Valdez. Everybody's talking about it. Dallas Braden's talking about it. AJ Brzezinski's talking about it. And everybody that played the game of baseball came to the same conclusion, that this was an intentional cross-up and that he showed up his teammate by showing his back to him and then not even acknowledging him after he crossed him up. And I believe it was a 94-mile-an-hour sinker that hit him in the chest protector. Just a grossly unsportsmanlike play from a damn good pitcher, but doesn't seem to be such a damn good teammate. And I just wanted to take the opposite perspective for a second and just give Salazar some credit for not losing his freaking mind in that moment. And I understand if Salazar was probably a better player overall, like if he had some stature in the league, that might have gone very differently. But I just, you don't see things like that very often at the major league level. Because that's some Bush League stuff. And I just wanted to give Salazar some credit in the moment for being able to keep his cool when clearly his pitcher couldn't.
Yeah, agreed. In Salazar, you could see a brief moment where there was a ton of frustration on his face.
Yeah.
And he very quickly kind of gained his composure and just tried to move on. And I think to your point, if that's a veteran catcher who's been around for 10, 15 years, that's handled very differently in the moment. And I think that's a player who understands, or I guess subconsciously understands, that he's a nobody compared to Framber Valdez, and so he kind of has to keep his cool, or else he's going to be made to be out the bad guy instead of it being Framber Valdez. And the entire baseball world has mostly rallied around him compared to Valdez. My final word, also baseball related, and the New York Mets have a starting pitching problem, and the New York Mets are about to hand their entire fate of their season to 3 young kids who, as we are speaking right now, have 5 combined major league starts, because the Mets are apparently considering sending Kodai Senga down to the minor leagues. And they are waiting to hear. By the time you next hear from us on Friday's show, we should know whether or not he's accepting or will accept that minor league assignment. They are going to hand their season to Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and Brandon Sproat. It just feels like that is the way this season has gone. Clay Holmes started today as we're recording the show, couldn't get through 5 innings. Really, anybody not named Nolan McLean can't give this Mets team length right now, and that includes David Peterson, who has struggled. And so this team...
I want to call timeout on your last word here for a second, because
I think this
only
is the rules, but okay.
And only to say this is, like, if you think we are heaping too much praise on Nolan McLean, go listen to the Tigers broadcast of his start, of his most recent start.
Yeah.
It's wild what he has been able to do this early in his career. The movement's crazy. Like you said, the Mets have a pitching problem, but it feels a whole lot different now than it felt the pitching problem they had when we talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they have a problem, and their fix is very obvious and very, very simple, but it's also one that comes with a ton of risk because it's 3 kids pitching for them. But yeah, Nolan McLean's made 4 starts. 3 of them are against teams that are going to be in the playoffs: Seattle, Detroit, and Philadelphia. And he's looked very good against those 3 teams, and he's won all 4 of his starts. But the Mets are looking to hand the reins over at this point and their entire fate of their season, because they have right now the best offense in the sport. Dating back to August 1st, they are the best in basically every metric that you want to look at. Scored the most runs they've ever scored, or hit the most home runs they've ever scored in a month last month. Scored the most runs they've ever scored in a home game in the history of their franchise in August. I mean, they have been the best offense in the sport since the beginning of August. They continue to do that. Scored 22 runs in the first 2 games of this Tiger series. Their offense is great. Starting pitching is a concern. Ryan Helsley is a concern as well. And the Mets
got hit hard again on Wednesday.
The Mets are putting the fate of a season that could end in a parade, could end with a championship with how good their offense is. They are passing those hopes and dreams to 3 guys. I think Sproat's coming up, who have combined to make 5 major league starts, 5 more major league starts than Jamie and I. That's it. That's the difference between Jamie and I and Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and Brandon Sproat. Like, that is where the Mets season is at. It's a gamble that I think many of us are comfortable with and okay with, but it is a gamble nonetheless. That will do it for us here on this edition of the NY Sports Index. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening to us. You want to watch the show, 2 ways for you to do that: the NY Sports Index YouTube channel, and you can also watch the show via the Spotify app. The video version of the pod lives there as well. We are back on Friday. Final previews, final predictions for the Jets and Giants week 1 of the NFL season. We'll actually have football that has occurred already by the time we speak to you again. It's a weird sentence to say out loud.
Yeah.
And we'll know what the Mets are doing with their rotation potentially by then.
And I guarantee you the Giants will be tied for 2nd place.
And on that note, we're out of here. We'll talk to you guys next time.